still focusing on Australia, Melbourne Cup Day unsurprisingly brought with it a hold on rates by the RBA. There was some concern around some recent higher than expected inflation data. We've said many times that Australian services inflation continues to be sticky, and it doesn't look like we're going to get the predicted rate cuts until next year. What are your thoughts about all of that here in Australia, JP?
Yeah, it's an important topic. Look, that Australian CPI number that we saw was an absolute horror show. You know, whatever way you sliced and diced that number, it was shocking. Every part of it was horrible. And, you know, Michelle Bullock at the RBA is right to say, you know what, that was a shocker. And she said it pretty much in her press conference. And, you know, not every economist in Australia, they all went, oh, and they kind of tore up their inflation forecasts and threw them promptly in the bin. So if you slice and dice that report, I mean, goodness gracious me, electricity was the standout. And every Australian, you know, I'm going to knock my profession. Every Australian has looked at their electricity bills in the last couple of years and gone, what the hell happened there? And so, you know, no surprise, electricity prices have been rising very sharply. And of course, that was pretty much the key driver of the quarterly inflation number and also the annual rate. By the way, moving forward, we're now going to have reliable monthly CPI numbers. So say farewell to the quarterly CPI blockbuster. We won't see that again. We're now moving to a monthly schedule. We've had monthly, but we now know that the ABS is going to produce a reasonably comprehensive and reliable monthly CPI report. But let me just go through the numbers. So the headline number of 3.2%. Obviously, the Reserve Bank and economists tend to look at the trim mean. Trim mean, what was that number? 3% on an annual basis. Electricity, the key driver, 9% on the quarter. Wait for this one, 23.6% increase at an annual rate for electricity costs. By the way, Australia has a serious problem with electricity inflation. I don't think I need to remind my friends in Canberra, even though they are ostriches with their heads in a hole, pretending that Australia doesn't have elevated electricity costs. And by the way, virtually every company that needs a lot of power and that is closing down, they are saying, we can't deal with electricity costs. We can't deal with costs of energy in Australia. It's one of the highest in the world. So maybe the friends in Canberra can actually take note of that. But then we look at coffee. I mean, heaven forbid, wait for this one, Eugene. Coffee, tea, and cocoa up 14.6% at an annual rate. And then we've got rent inflation, again, quite robust. Services inflation, 3.5% at an annual rate. Very sticky, very stubborn. And now we're beginning also ominously to see capital goods inflation rising. And that's been a key disinflationary driver for some time. So we've got the worst of every world here. We've got unsustainable electricity prices. We've even got, heaven forbid, coffee prices going up. Rent, we all know the story there. And then now, of course, we knew about sticky service-based inflation. We've spoken about that before. Now we've got rising capital goods inflation. Whichever way you look at this, no wonder the RBA was in shock, and every economist in the land kind of took the day off just in case someone in the media asked them why they got their inflation forecast so wrong. So here we are, elevated inflation, December, forget about it for a rate cut. And now most analysts pushing out to May or thereabouts for an additional rate cut. So yeah, it was a shocker.
What were the expected numbers? Roughly?
Oh, no, the expected numbers were much lower than that. Probably numbers near 2.8, 2.9.
Wow, that's a big difference. Okay, so that's a big change in terms of the prospects for interest rate cuts. You know, I think we're behind the curve in terms of what was expected a year ago for this year already. And if now the average economist is saying it's sort of going to be the middle of next year, that's going to have a significant impact. And it's interesting that Australia seems to have a bigger inflation problem than the US based on that. And a lot of it is not to do with tariffs. So we're interested to see how all that plays out.